All right, here we go, everyone. It's after further review, and it's same different year, same result. A coaching search. How many times have we had to do this over the years? Somebody asked me this morning, how many times have I had to do this show over the year? A lot, and it's unfortunate, but that's where we are with the Cleveland Browns, 6-10 to finish things out. Freddie Kitchens out last night as the head coach, and the team already apparently begun their search this morning. I'm Dave DeNatale. Welcome aboard. We have, as always, the voice of the Browns, Jim Donovan, here for our season finale. Jimmy, good morning, my friend.
Good morning, Dino.
Well, here we go again, Jimmy. I guess none of us were really surprised with how things played itself out last night, but just so unfortunate because this is not where any of us thought the Browns were going to be 12 months ago when Freddie Kitchens was hired.
No, not at all. I mean, just to hear you even say the record at 6-10 is it sends a shiver down your spine because it just seemed like it's just unbelievable how it all unraveled. And it was something that it kind of came apart pretty early, Dino. I think I really go back to, and I know you and I have discussed this a lot. I go back to opening day, and that was the first day that really I had some doubts, and I wanted to be wrong, but opening day really troubled me because going into that weekend, I just felt it was imperative that the Browns win the game, and to win the game, they were going to have to look good, and they were going to have to play very well, because as we now find out, Tennessee's a very well-coached team. Mike Vrabel did a wonderful job in preparing his team to come into Cleveland that day and take on the Browns, knowing that it was going to be a chaotic atmosphere, an electrifying atmosphere because of the Browns and so much excitement about the Browns coming into the season. And he had his team ready, and Freddie really did not have his team ready. And it was so visible that it just came apart out on the field. 18 penalties, player getting ejected from the game, Mayfield throwing 3 interceptions. And then as it progressed, you always hoped that it would get better, but anytime Freddie had an opportunity, and the Browns had an opportunity as a team to right the ship, and there were about 2 or 3 different intervals where that could have happened during the season, they never could do it. And certainly in the last 3 weeks, and losing to the 2 teams like Arizona and Cincinnati, who at the time Arizona had 3 wins when they played the Browns, and the Bengals had 1 win coming into the game yesterday. And to outplay the Browns the way they did, it really is a sad commentary on the way this whole thing played out. It's a wasted year. It's a disastrous year. And that's when coaches get fired.
Yeah, and as I think about it, to me, the biggest disappointment this year was that the franchise quarterback, the most, arguably the most important person in this organization, he regressed this year. And the Browns went out of their way. I mean, they hired the head coach. I mean, let's be honest. When Freddie Kitchens was hired, his biggest attribute, I think, was the fact that Baker had played so well with he as the play caller. But Mayfield regressed this year. And, I mean, that to me, I was watching the game yesterday and saying, boy, he still makes throws that a second-year quarterback shouldn't make, and that's going to have to be something that they're really going to have to look at.
Well, I think what they have to make certain is that he's not the most important person in the organization, and I think that might be the mortal sin of the entire offseason and coming into this regular season and what just finished up yesterday. I don't think he can be the most important person in the organization. And I think to hand him that crown so early in his career was, as we look back on it now, it was wrong. It was premature and it was wrong. And it's hurt the organization. It's hurt the franchise. And individually, it's really hurt him. He was not well served by getting all of the power and all of the decision making, or at least getting a nod or getting the opportunity to give a nod to whatever decision they made. And I mean any decision they made as to even what they wore on Sundays. I mean, it just didn't warrant that. I mean, he doesn't have a winning record as a quarterback. His interception, number is astronomical right now. And the biggest chip that he had in the game, making him the number 1 pick overall in the draft, wasn't that he was a walk-on at Texas Tech and then at Oklahoma that all the way won the Heisman. It wasn't this Rudy movie script. It was that he was accurate. That's what it was. I mean, he was accurate. He was uncanny with his accuracy, and that's what people want. All of the other stuff plays great for columns that Peter King write, or long pull-out articles that Mary Kay or Tony Grossi write. But it really, the football part of it, it wasn't well enough developed. It wasn't far enough down the road that you hand him the same kind of power that you give to quarterbacks like Tom Brady, who really probably doesn't have as much power right now in all of these years in New England that Baker had coming into this season with the Browns, or an Aaron Rodgers, or maybe Drew Brees, or people like that. I mean, to hand him that kind of power within the organization off of last season, you come to look back on it now, it was wrong. So I don't think the biggest thing for him is he shouldn't be the most important person in the organization. He should be a player, a very important player, and a huge part of the equation when they finally turn this thing around, but not right up at the top of the pyramid right now. That was a big mistake.
It reminds me of almost this conversations we had 10 years ago about LeBron James with the Cavaliers. And now, of course, it's different. The roster's smaller. Basketball is different than the NFL. But hearing what you're saying, it's just I just recall these are conversations we had when you sit there and say, well, maybe the Cavs gave LeBron too much power, and ultimately you don't get to where you want to go.
Yeah, you're right. And I mean, even coming out of high school, we labeled him a king. Yeah. As far as LeBron was concerned, and he certainly did amazing things. He backed up his game, obviously a lot more than it's being backed up. But they're very different sports,
right?
And you need so many other contributing factors and support casts around you to be successful as a quarterback. I mean, there are really good quarterbacks. I mean, Archie Manning was a great quarterback, but he always played on really bad teams, and that's what's gone on there. And yet his sons played on better teams and achieved the highest level. But, yeah, I just think that I think really too much we were so starved for somebody to come in and, first of all, want to be here, and second of all, then go out and perform at that particular position, quarterback, in a favorable way, that we coronated somebody probably way too early. And I think that's what happened. I mean, there are a lot of problems, and he wasn't the only one, but everything seemed to be directed towards him, to make him happy, to make him comfortable, to make him hopefully successful. Now, the successful part didn't pay off. I don't know how comfortable he was. He seemed agitated and irritated pretty much through the season because of his performance on the field and the critiques of the way he played on the field. So I would think as he goes into this offseason leading up to next season, what he knows now, knows now probably will be better serve him as he goes into the year next year.
Jim Donovan joins us, the voice of the Browns, on After Further Review. A couple of things from Adam Schefter this morning that I wanted to get your take on. First of all, is this coaching search gets underway already. The first name out of the chute as far as a person the Browns have requested to interview, a familiar name to anybody who's followed the NFL, and certainly here in Northeast Ohio, Josh McDaniels of the Patriots. Now, unfortunately for the Browns, they can't interview him right away because the Patriots lost yesterday. But is McDaniels finally ready to be the head coach somewhere? I mean, I feel like this has been the last 3 or 4 years, not just with the Browns, but with other teams around the league. He was going to be the Colts coach and then kind of turned it down at the last second. He flirted with Green Bay last year. What's your thought about McDaniels?
Well, what happened in Indianapolis and the way that was handled and the position that he put that franchise in would, in most businesses, never mind sports, but if you did that in any business and you accepted a job and then you kind of at the last minute walked away from it, that would normally blackball you in that occupation for maybe forever or certainly for a long period of time. But in the NFL, because it's a win now type of situation. And every team, the Browns, the Giants, the Redskins, the Carolina Panthers, those teams that are now looking for head coaches, and the list is probably going to grow longer as the day goes on here on this Black Monday. But, you want to win right now. So those sins are forgiven. You say 3 Hail Marys and you're ready to go and you're back in good graces, as long as you can provide some light at the end of the tunnel for these teams that are looking for wins and a winning formula and thus a winning head coach. So I think, he automatically, because of his pedigree, is on everybody's, short list. And the Browns have called that number a number of times now because they've had so many coaching searches going on that they have called New England a number of times to gauge his interest and to get the opportunity to talk to him. They have talked to him in the past. He's taken his name out a couple of times because for one reason or another. And but I think right now he also has to look at the situation in New England. And it's not just because they lost to the Dolphins yesterday, but, Father Time is eventually, at some point, and if it's not even on the doorstep right now, of catching up with Tom Brady, and he's at a decision point of what he's going to do. Is he going to stay in New England? Is he going to leave after this season? Is he going to retire? And I think Josh is so connected to that, and that's part of the reason why he really finds such a comfort factor and such a winning factor in staying in New England. But that may change soon. It may change at the end of this current playoff run for the New England Patriots. And he has seen others leave New England. Brian Flores did an amazing job down in Miami and really hurt the Patriots by coming back and beating them yesterday. And he's the head coach down in Miami, and he took over a rubble of a situation there and really turned it into a functioning football team with a bunch of street free agents and did an amazing coaching job. Matt Patricia's hanging on in Detroit. Bill O'Brien is doing pretty well down in Houston. They're a playoff team, it seems, every year. So, maybe it is finally time to cut the cord, where we've been close to cutting the cord between Josh and the Patriots every year, it seems. And now might be the time to do it because others have done it, and they're okay. And in Flores' situation, he's better than okay. And in the past, it's blown up on certain guys. And it blew up personally on Josh in Denver rather quickly after he got off to a pretty quick start there as the head coach of the Broncos. But I would think that, he would definitely be on not only their list, but the Giants or anybody else that is looking for a guy that's been uber successful.
And with that in mind, then there's this other half of the Schefter tweet from this morning. He mentions the Giants and the Browns, who both fired their head coaches, as you just mentioned, the Giants, in the last 24 hours, could be making more changes per league sources. This is from, again, Adam Schefter. The new head coach in each city is expected to have input on whether the general managers there stay or go. Front office situation's fluid. So that says to me, I wonder if a guy like Nick Caserio is able to join Josh McDaniels, if that might be one of the things Schefter's referring to. And we've seen this before sometimes with coaches. If they can bring their personnel guy, then they want to come and take the job. And I wonder if that's what we're looking at potentially here.
Well, we could be. That would be quite a team. It worked out so well here when Eric Mangini selected George Kokinis. That's it. That was a dark period of time in Cleveland Browns coaching search history. That's tricky. It really is, because immediately you just get, by just the visual part of it, it seems like the general manager is working for the head coach. And as I said, that's tricky unless everybody has their cards out on the table and understands the parameters of the situation at the outset. That really does get tricky. But there was obviously a situation in the offseason where it appeared that Houston had made overtures towards Nick Caserio coming to the Texans, and the Patriots got all riled up about that. They've been very protective of him because he's been such an important part of their winning formula there in New England and the Patriot way. I think that would be they would form a very, very formidable team. I wonder a couple of things. I wonder if you take a look at the situation today here in Cleveland and why the Browns are not really having a press conference today. I'm hearing that it's tomorrow, and I'm wondering why they're not having it today. After all, they fired the guy last night at about 8 o'clock when the team landed coming home from Cincinnati. And normally you take care of things right away,
Right.
and then you get on with your search. So that fluid description that Adam puts on the front office situation with teams and the possibility that the head coach could have influence over who the next GM would be in certain scenarios, I mean, that seems to, that makes you wonder about John Dorsey's situation here. Is it rock solid? Now, he had described his relationship with ownership as rock solid, that they were in step with each other, and that was yesterday during the day before the Bengals and Browns even kicked it off. So that's one thing. The other thing you wonder about, Dino, with something like that is, does that kind of throw a light on a guy like Urban Meyer,
Right.
who, would probably command a great deal of power coming in as a head coach / something else, because he's so used to controlling everything as the CEO of these big college programs. So that's an interesting twist.
Yeah, it's interesting because we'll get back to Meyer for a second, but I was wondering yesterday when John Dorsey put out a statement after the Freddie Kitchens firing. My first thought was, well, okay, I guess this means that Dorsey's okay, nothing's happening, but. I wonder, though, with the Haslams, I mean, they've been willing to try just about any method possible to hire a head coach and to hire a front office and to get it right. And, it hasn't worked, and they'd be the first to tell you that. But because the fact that they gave John Dorsey a lot of wiggle room to hire this head coach for Freddie Kitchens, and they're already jettisoning it after 1 year, I just wonder if that is a signal that they may want to. Number one, they're going to have more say, and then maybe who gets hired. But number two, the process itself might change.
Yeah, and there's also an economic factor to it too. I mean, when you do this, you're going to have to pay Freddie off now. Let's presume he had a 4-year deal, or at the minimum, he had a 3-year deal. You're going to have to pay him off now for at least 2, maybe 3 years. And even if he gets another job, you're going to have to match. What the other team pays. You're going to have to match his salary with what he was going to get contractually with the Browns and make up the difference in that. The other thing is all of those assistants, and that was a brand new staff, they all got 3-year deals too. So, I mean, this is a massive thing to change this. And the other thing is that, now it's also a very expensive thing, and the Haslams certainly know all about that because they've been paying off coaches who aren't their coaches anymore since they've really owned the football team. I will give them this, okay? I think they have tried it every way, and it's not going to be right until they get the right guy. I mean, and we're not going to know it's the right guy until they win, and it looks good out on the field. But I think to the eye and certainly to the appetite, it was stunning how badly this thing looked as we came to the finish line. And in particular, I mean, the ugliness of that great night on that Thursday night game against the Steelers, when we should have been celebrating that win, and the ugly taste that everybody had walking out of that stadium because of that brutal melee at the end of the game, and the Myles Garrett situation, and your team being, it seems, perceived more blamed than the Pittsburgh Steelers were. And then everything that followed that, I mean, that's tough for ownership to take a look at. So it's not, and in the Dorsey case, it's not just the Freddie Kitchens hiring and them allowing him to name Freddie Kitchens, but it's also the product out on the field because of the Freddie Kitchens hiring, which goes back to John Dorsey, the Odell Beckham situation, and the soap opera that is and always is going to be with him on the team. He's never going to be just a wide receiver on the team. He's always going to be the headline. He's going to be above the fold, the old newspaper, language. And the look of the team on the field yesterday was of this rogue football team that had no system offensively. It had no talent left defensively, and they were just a mess. And that's tough for ownership to take a look at and walk out of a stadium and then say, okay, we're going to leave this alone and let it go. And even though it's going to cost us a ton of money, we need to make a change. And I think that's where they are right now. And they have every right to go and question John Dorsey about the saneness of what he did, not just the coaching situation, but the trades, free agency, and things like that, and where the organization is under his total control, which they gave him. You know, they stepped back and allowed him to run everything.
And yeah, I mean, and that's what everybody was asking, 18 months ago or whatever, when they got rid of Sashi Brown and got rid of Hugh Jackson, and then eventually got rid of Hugh Jackson. But when they got rid of Sashi Brown, we want to get a football person back to be in charge of the 53 and to handle the draft, handle the trades. And yeah, I mean, the draft in 2018 has looked great, but I mean, you could sit back now, I think, and I think we did one of our shows. We said, you have to look back now, I think, with a different lens about even some of the players that have been picked, because, the Austin Corbetts and the Averys and the Callaways and those players that have been cast off already from 2018. I mean, he has to be accountable for that too.
Yeah, really, last year at this time, we were singing a different tune. The guy was dealing, he was coming up aces with everything that he did. Everything that he did was coming up and looking great, and he continued on that role. And that's why everybody was so accepting of the Kitchens hiring, is that, hey, why upset the apple cart here? Everything's going well. The team's on a rise, so let it go. Why do we need somebody to come in here with previous head coaching experience? We're okay. And a lot of it was because we're okay because we've got John Dorsey.
Right.
And he's picking the personnel, and he's going to pick Freddie's staff, and he's going to go into free agency with a lot of money, and he's going to make draft choices multiply into more draft choices and correct draft choices. But he's been on a bad roll lately because things have not played out well for one reason or another, and some of them go back to getting the wrong people here. And that's you have to be accountable for that. If you're living up to the standards of the job, you have to be accountable, and you have to take ownership of the decisions that you have made that didn't pan out. Now, if you can sit back and say, well, they are going to pan out, you just need to give them a little bit more time. We were so young, and these players were all going into basically their second years, and they'll be okay once they've hit their bump and they all hit it together, and we'll be better in the future. Okay, then we're okay if everything looks good coming up next year. But we are definitely not there this morning. There's a lot of doubt.
What's your, there have been some reports nationally that this fluid situation in the front office might open the door for Paul D. Podesta, the team's chief strategy officer, to assume a larger role in the organization. What's your thought on that?
Well, and this is not I'm not trying to be glib or trying to be sarcastic, but I really don't know what Paul, his duties are and what the level of those duties are. I really am not sure, and I'm not accurate about it because it would just be an opinion. So I don't know how much he weighs in on anything, whether it's the business of the Browns, and that's a big business, or it's the brand of the Browns, or if it's the football part of the Browns, or the analytics part of the Browns, and what the level of access and dependability is for analytics. I'm really not sure about all of that, and that I'm not slighting Paul. I'm just kind of pleading ignorant on that. I see him, but it's usually on a game day. Sometimes I don't see him. That doesn't mean that he's not there. So I really don't know. I don't know what an expanded role would be for him. I know that he was part of the process and last year, but obviously he didn't get the guy that he had recommended to ownership, and that was Kevin Stefanski, the offensive coordinator, now with the Minnesota Vikings. But I don't know how, if that was a close vote. I don't know if it was a decision that he felt angry that he wasn't listened to. So I really don't know. That would be interesting. I don't know what his role would be. He's he'll always, to me, be a baseball guy, right, that was brought in to help a struggling football team. And I can't give you an accurate answer on him.
Very interesting. Yeah, when I saw that yesterday, I'm like, wow. It's because I'm with you. You sit there and you go, okay, what's your day to day? Or he lives in California. That's another consideration. If you want to become like a chief executive or whatever of the franchise, that requires moving you and your family, and so you're talking about a whole nother thing there too.
Yeah, I mean, he does. He lives in California. Oftentimes, his young family is with him when they come and join the Browns, whether it's on the road or in Cleveland on a game day. But for instance, I can't even tell you, does he put 2 or 3 days in the office in Berea, or does he work from home in California? But if he was going to take on an added role, I think immediately it would command that he would have to be based here in Cleveland and be in Berea daily, never mind just popping in and out. But again, that's not a slight on him. That's obviously an agreement, a situation he had with the Haslams. And even when they moved away from Sashi Brown and that regime, they kept Paul DePodesta around and used him for different projects. But again, I don't know the specifics of what those projects were.
Jimmy, last thing, because I mean, I know you have a busy day today in the Browns. As a matter of fact, the players are going to be talking to the media here in a few minutes. So when you look at this franchise kind of from a wider lens and talking to people in the NFL and doing everything you do during the week, this may not be as desirable a head coaching job maybe as it was a year ago for the Browns, but I got to think, I mean, there's only 32 jobs out there, and you do have a lot of things in Cleveland that go for you. Fans still, I think, should have a reason to be optimistic, despite the fact we haven't had a lot of reasons for optimism, if that makes any sense. There are reasons still why this can be done right, correct?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's not a barren roster by any stretch of the imagination. It's a very interesting roster. It's kind of a convoluted roster, to be honest with you. I mean, really, it's great having Kareem Hunt, but I don't think the Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb thing really worked out the way that we thought it was going to work out. And that I'm not discrediting either player. It's just, it was convoluted. I mean, he joined the team in the middle of the year. They were well on their way to riding with Nick Chubb, and then suddenly they're going to implant a really unique player with specific skills and dynamic skills offensively. So, I mean, that's part of the convoluted way things have gone. I mean, it's an offensive line that needs immediate attention. But that can be done. I mean, that can be done. I mean, there are a lot of teams that are going to have to go out and fix that particular area. And I would think, Dino, that even if that was just fixed, the team, especially offensively, specifically, would look so much better because I think they were that poor, the Browns' offensive line. And that was exposed yesterday against a team that, was number whatever, right down at the bottom of the NFL in playing against the run. And, they didn't have a lot of sacks, and yet they dominated the Browns' offensive line yesterday. But, and then you've got the personalities, and that is the trigger point, I think. You have more personalities, maybe, than you have talent. And that's the tricky part about a guy looking at the team to be a head coach. I mean, you want to coach the football team, and there are enough football problems to go around to be fixed to make the team winners. But then you've got to become psychologists too,
right.
And you have to manage these personalities, and they are at times too much bigger than the football part of the team. And that's the tricky balance that might have some talented guys saying, you know what, never mind the history, never mind the revolving door in the front of Berea with coaches coming in and coaches going out very quickly. It's that equation that's a problem. Can I fix that where I just want to be able to handle the football part, make us better offensively, make the quarterback what I think he can become, build a good defense? Never mind that. Now I got to handle, these big personalities, and that's the tricky part, I think.
And maybe that goes to what Adam Schefter was saying, that a head coach may want to come in here and may want to have a large say in personnel and the roster because of what you just described.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's a really when you look at the roster, it's really a mishmash of things, and it can be fixed. I mean, there are other teams and there are other examples, and I can't really think of too many off the top of my head here, where you look at it and you say, "My God, they have a lot of talent." Yeah, but they stink. And unfortunately, today, I say that about the Browns. We have a lot of talent, but we're 6-10. I mean, that's not good. But we have a lot of talent. But I think at the basic form, you have to take a look at that and say, okay, but does that particular talent fit here? And is it going to fit a coach? Is he going to be able to handle that? Is he going to be able to control it? Is he going to be able to deal with it? Is he going to be able to make it mesh inside that locker room? That locker room was not a happy place this year for a lot of different reasons. And that really that's your community. And you take that out into the practice field, and then you advance that to Sundays. And as we saw 10 times this year, it didn't work.
That's it, and that's why we are where we are here on another Black Monday, talking about a Cleveland Browns coaching change. Unbelievable. Well, my friend, I know you've got a busy day today. Thank you for making time here on After Further Review. We'll see you later on tonight at 6, 7, and 11. We'll do it again, right? I mean, another Black Monday.
All right, we know the drill. Thanks,
we know the
Dino.
drill. Thank you, my friend. All right, that is Jim Donovan, the voice of the Browns. Try to figure this out. That's where we're at. Over and over and over again. And, as I said, I mean, at some point, they've got to get this right. They've got to have the right people. They've got to get this right. Maybe it'll be this time. I hope so. You have a lot of comments both on Twitter. Who would you like as the next head coach? Urban Meyer / college coach. You might want, Lincoln Riley or Rule or Matt Campbell or whoever else out there. So far, 40% of you say Josh McDaniels, 29% Mike McCarthy, 17% Ron Rivera, and 14% say the college guy. And it's interesting because I do believe, I've thought in talking to Jimmy and reading Ben Axelrod's story about the John Dorsey situation. If you want Josh McDaniels, he's going to want to bring in his own personnel guy. I don't think it can be John Dorsey in charge of the 53 with Josh McDaniels as your head coach. I think he's going to want his guy. And as Jimmy said, it didn't really work out well for the Browns when they did that with Eric Mangini and George Kokinis. And also you can say it didn't, the last time the Browns made it to the playoffs, it was with the college guy, Butch Davis, but it was also with Butch picking the players with his personnel guy, and that didn't work out long term either. Just something to think about. But more than 500 the effort has been gone long ago. I agree, Connie, with the thought. It's more than just the coach, but I think a lot of it's the coach. Let's put it that way. I think the coach has to be kind of that stabilizing part of the organization. The Browns this year were unstable. They were undisciplined, despite all the talent they had. The mishmash, as Jimmy put it. They need a leader. Buddy, but be the guy to hold them accountable, and like the owner holds the coach accountable, and the GM holds the coach accountable. So I think, yes, it doesn't solve everything, just like getting one or two more offensive linemen doesn't solve everything, but it helps. I think it helps. Matt says hire Mike McCarthy. Kevin said Greg Williams is respected by the role. He shouldn't have been calling for offense. Well, unfortunately, I'll listen to the argument all day. The Browns were trending upwards towards the end of last year. But, you could tell, I think that it was never, with John Dorsey and Greg Williams, it was not going to work out the way John would have wanted it to work out. Could he have been a head coach? Well, we don't, time only tell. We don't know. But it's interesting to look back on that, because that's where, but if you think about where we were this time a year ago, it was pretty much, I think everybody felt like it was going to be, Paul DePodesta with Kevin Stefanski aside, I think we all thought it would be initially, okay, it'll be either Greg Williams or it'll be Freddie Kitchens or somebody else. And it ended up being Freddie Kitchens, and it didn't work out. Bo says, I think Freddie had a lot of personal issues with some of the players like Hollywood Higgins, David Njoku. I think they made the right decision, although I liked Freddie at the beginning. Yeah, I mean, it was hard to argue with hiring Freddie this time a year ago. It was. And it seemed like it was all just going to be a smooth running thing. We're going to keep the offense going, with the way on the same kind of track line it had been going. You'll get Steve Wilkes here, who has head coaching experience to run the defense, and it's going to be a well-oiled machine. And it was anything but that. But I give the Haslams credit for this point. They recognized that things as they were going forward wouldn't have worked. Because we would have, if they would have kept Freddie Kitchens, we would have been on, all next year, would have been on Freddie watch. And if they got off to a bad start, then all of a sudden you're firing Freddie Kitchens, you're getting another interim coach in there, and then you got to start the process again at the end of 2020. So, the Browns did what they had to do. Now they've got to get it right. Karen says, what do you think about Urban Meyer? Is he a good fit for this team? I mean, here's the thing. Urban has kind of bred success wherever he's gone as a college head coach, from Bowling Green to Utah, certainly to Florida, 2 national championships and a national championship at Ohio State. Can he coach in the NFL? Well, I mean, I would say this is the point that I heard Jimmy talking about earlier. The way that college and the NFL, the fact that the NFL has started to adopt some of that, read option and the air raid offense, I don't think it's going to would be as big of a transition, or, a more, how do I want to put it, a kind of a square peg in a round hole as maybe it would have been 10, 15 years ago. Having said that, my question with Urban still is his health. It's I don't know if he's actually had all of the cyst issues resolved yet. I just know this: the posture he had watching the team that he coached, Ohio State, play in the college football playoff the other night, and he had his hands to his knees and kind of bent over like a head coach does in a stressful time. I'm sitting there going, he still has the fire to coach in him. So. Yeah, do I think long-term, do I think it's the right fit for the Browns? I don't. But, I'll certainly, put it this way. If Urban Meyer would be the next head coach of the Browns, he would win the press conference. There's no question about that. One or two more here before we get done here. Matt says about Mike McCarthy, just kind of looking at his resume, and I think this is very valid. 124 wins in the regular season, 10-18 postseason record in 13 years with the Packers, 6 division titles, and of course winning the Super Bowl. As he won it at Super Bowl, was it 45? Yeah, I mean, look, and people are very quick to kind of cast that off and say, well, that was because he had Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, but they still had to go through a full season and win. And he called the plays and was the head coach. I would say this. I think Mike McCarthy should be interviewed. I think if he does get an interview, it may tell you that John Dorsey and that front office still is being heard by Jimmy Haslam and D. Haslam, because, that Dorsey was a big part of that group with the Packers, Mike McCarthy, Elliott Wolf, Alonzo Highsmith. So if McCarthy ends up being interviewed, and I would expect if Dorsey's still the GM, that's going to happen, then that's a logical connection that I think you should look at. Anything else here? A couple things on Twitter that I wanted to get to. Brad is not a Josh McDaniels fan. He says, Josh is 9 miles of bad road. He isn't capable of being head coach, and he isn't a man of his word. We should pass. We need a proven head coach. And I think when it comes to McDaniels, I think you have to look at that. His resume in Denver was not good. And I think in his decisions about who he drafted in Denver were not good. So I think you have to look at that when you're evaluating, even though it's been about 10 years, I think that's still important. Okay, we have a ton of coverage throughout the day on the Freddie Kitchens firing and the Browns' search for the next head coach. WKYC.com is your home for that. We have stories up. We'll continue to follow the story as we go. And then Jimmy is in tonight for What Matters Most at 6. But stay with us here at WKYC.com for full coverage. Jay Crawford is coming up also in an hour with lunch break as well. All right, that'll do it for us. For Jim Donovan and for Tyler Carey, I'm Dave DeNatale. Thanks for watching After Further Review right here on 3 News, Facebook Live, YouTube, and WKYC.com.